Hey everyone, welcome to Marketing for Designers podcast. I'm your host, Masha Coyne, a messaging strategist and a copywriter for the interior design industry. I've been marketing for what feels like forever in my past career at some of the biggest global firms like KPMG and Deloitte. Today, I write website copy for designers using my signature voice of customer framework. If you're a designer looking to up your marketing game and attract premium clients, this podcast is for you. Each week on the show, we're going to be talking all things marketing, from branding to messaging to social media, SEO, and so much more, so you can have all the tools you need to grow your business and attract your dream clients. Hey guys, welcome back to Marketing for Designers podcast. I really got to get creative with my intros because I feel like it's getting a little old every time I say that I'm so excited about this guest or today's topic, but I actually do get excited when I come across a subject matter expert or a topic that's not only relevant to my audience of this podcast, interior designers, but also makes this bold promise like, let me save you a ton of time and teach you something, how to do something a lot more efficiently, better, or different. So until I find a more exciting intro, let's just stick with this one. I am excited to talk to my guest today about how to develop a content plan in under 30 minutes. And my guest today is Jennifer Kolbuc of Mountaintop Consulting. Jennifer has spent over 15 years creating digital marketing plans for businesses of all sizes. She is the co-founder of the Marketing Club, a membership program that supports business owners with their marketing and community building. Jen has a no BS approach, I love that, and gets right to the heart of the matter so that her clients can start to see the results immediately. Jen is based in Port Moody, British Columbia, and spends her free time, hitting the trails with her two young kids. Jen, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me on. I always love a new podcast idea, and I'm excited about this topic today.
Me too. All right. Well, before we get started, I want to ask you something. Before we get started, I think I saw something on your Instagram in one of your recent posts. I think it was a post about celebrating achievements or milestones. And something caught my eye, one particular milestone. You helped grow one client to 75,000 of new followers from scratch over 5 years. That sounds incredible. And I want to know the secrets. I'm assuming it wasn't just one thing that you did, but I'm wondering if you could share something about it. Like, what happened there? How'd you do it?
Yeah, actually, it's a great story because it was actually my very first client. So I think I started with them 7 years ago. I'm no longer working for them now. I actually just wrapped at the end of last year. So my very first social media client, an account close to my heart, Vancouver Trails, which is all about hiking, which is something I'm huge passionate for. And so when I first started with them, they had about 1,000 followers, and the owner of the account at that time just wasn't doing very much with it. It wasn't his passion. His passion was doing the website and the blog and things like that, but didn't know much about social media. So really, there was a few things right away. I mean, one was the consistency. We know that social media rewards consistency, and we're going to talk a lot about that today with the content planning. So, at the time, the posts were kind of sporadic, and when he could obviously find time to do them. So I was like, no, we got to be posting like every single day. Two, making the content more timely and more relevant. Obviously, with hiking, it's very seasonal. It can be very day to day to what's going on. But the biggest shift for that particular client was really utilizing user-generated content, or what we like to call in the industry UGC. Now, this is being recorded in 2024, and UGC, I feel like it's come full circle. It might almost be out of date again, but it's kind of back in date. But certainly 6-7 years ago when I started with this client, UGC was a more, I want to say like newfangled thing on Instagram. So that basically means sharing other creators' content on your account with their permission. And I won't get into the exact details of how that all happens. But basically putting all those pieces together, posting consistently, but it was really growing the community, the user-generated content community, because people then wanted to be featured on the page. So people would start reaching out to us. We started working with some collaborations with specific photographers and videographers in the area. And then really just building on that. That account was really specific in the sense that, of course, it's easy to follow and like a hiking account because who doesn't want to see awesome, amazing, beautiful trails from around here? But really it's finding one thing that works for you and your brand, and then just committing to sticking with it.
I love that. Oh my God, what a great story. I love that. And I can't wait to get more into the details of not particularly that, but I have a feeling that you're going to bring a lot of interesting stuff about this, about finding that thing for you specifically for your brand. So this particular topic today, it's a juicy topic. And I would guesstimate that at least 90% of my interior design clients complain, or maybe even more, complain or vent to me all the time that generating content, developing content, posting on social media, showing up consistently, that's their biggest pain. So I'm excited to hear your advice about it, how to alleviate that pain, or at least get some advice in terms of how to do things a bit more easier, a bit more efficiently. So to get us started, Jen, can we start at the very beginning? What is a content plan? Why do you even need one? Why do you even need it? And why can't you just be posting on the go when you have stuff to post about or something newsworthy?
Yeah, great questions. First, I'll start with the why you need a content plan because it kind of dovetails into your second question there. The why you need a content plan, one I just touched on because you have to be consistent with social media. We know that Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever your platform of choice is, they have all said that the algorithm rewards consistency. Now, that doesn't mean that you can miss you can miss a day, you can miss a week. Life happens, and we get that. But you do want to pick a pace of social media that's going to work for you and your business. So I always say it's better to commit to showing up like 2 to 3 days a week, every week, than to have 1 week that's like 7 days, but then you ghost for a couple of weeks because you got burnt out and they try and come back and post every day again. But trying to pick a rhythm that is consistent. Now, for the on the go piece, I'm kind of split between two things. So can you post on the go? Because sometimes things do happen in the moment, especially if there was something newsworthy in your industry, which I mean, in interior design, I'm not sure how like breaking news there is, but maybe, the Pantone colors come out for the
like
year.
Attending an event or something.
Yeah. So I think in an event situation, that's very unique. In an event situation, you might be posting on the fly, although Instagram stories are a great kind of resource to be using during that time because that's what's meant to be posted on the fly. But from a typical day to day, as an interior designer or business owner, you're busy doing the interior design. So if it's, all of a sudden 9 o'clock in the morning, you've got client calls, you're booked out, you're on site by noon, you're like, oh, shoot, I don't have a post ready. What am I going to post? Then you try and take a picture. Then you're on your phone trying to write one caption with your thumbs, trying to type it out. And before you know it, you either give up posting altogether or it ends up taking way too long, quote unquote, trying to do it on the fly because you're trying to do it on this small device. So, when you have a content plan, the long-term goal is you can do some of this stuff in batches to save time and probably on a desktop as well. So for me, some of that batching looks like, sitting down and writing your captions in a Google Doc or a Word doc, on my full keyboard here, planning out what photos or videos you might need so that next time you're at, a client's house, you already know what you need going in ahead of time. So hopefully by putting a content plan into place, you're both going to be consistent, but also save time too.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Well, it makes a lot of sense. And you're right. I think the way to think about stories is when something happens on the go, whether it's an event, or maybe you're in the midst of a project, or maybe you're doing mood board or whatever it is, those things you can do. But for your content pillars, or maybe you'll use another terminology, but for your like themes, the important things in your business, those should be pre-planned and posted consistently and hopefully in line with your business objectives.
Yes, exactly. I think you've summed it up perfectly. Exactly what I would say.
Awesome. Okay. So walk us through the types of content you need as an interior designer. So as you know, my audience is interior designer. So if you could look at it from the lens of an interior designer, that would be so helpful.
Perfect. The good news is I teach this workshop a lot, and it's called what we're kind of summarizing here today. And the pillars work almost regardless of your business. Obviously, there's some nuance to the pillars, but they're going to work regardless. So for interior designers, I will tailor some of my content examples for you specifically. But we want to break down, first of all, what types of content do you need? And this doesn't really matter on the platform, but just the buckets of content, if you will. So there's 3 different buckets. The goal with social media is obviously to get people to know you, the awareness bucket, get them to like and trust you, and then ultimately get them to work with you, hire you, book you, whatever that's going to look like as an interior designer for you. So let's break that down a little further. So pillar number one, this is the awareness content. This is just like showing up on the feed for the very first time and just like letting people know that ultimately that like you exist as a person. So this is the fun content. I typically say this is the light and fluffy content that people put out to attract new people. Again, format doesn't matter as much here, but I typically do for Instagram lean into reels. Now, if you're an interior designer, this is where I feel like you get to kind of show off all those beauty shots of what you've been working on. I can imagine for your interior designer, it's that like before and after, right? The like wait for it kind of thing. And you've got this like wow moment. You're not really getting into the weeds about like the colors or the palettes or how you stage it. It's really just meant to be like, oh, wow. That really looks beautiful. I'm going to follow them because, you know what, I think they're doing some cool stuff together. It's light, it's fluffy, and it's just meant to grow your followers and really just be that kind of quick hit piece of content.
And the way you talk about awareness, this first bucket or pillar, by the way, I also use terminology buckets. It's just so, it just illustrates it perfectly. But this awareness pillar, is that more about your business and your work, or is it literally about you as an interior designer, the human behind your brand, or both?
Oh, I think for that one, typically it's really about your about your work or business for that one, because you as a person, I'm going to get into more in a little bit bucket number two. So for bucket number one, it's like the latest, fluffiest bucket, the one where you're really just looking for likes. You know what I'm saying? It's like the like content. It's easy to like, especially as an interior designer. It's often your most visual piece because you've got beautiful visuals to look at. So this is the beauty shots kind of piece. Then for bucket number two, this is where I want to get to know you more as an interior designer. So what makes you unique as an interior designer? Maybe there's certain palettes or trends that you like. Maybe you have a certain way of an interior designing that you like to work with. Maybe you work with certain types of clients. Like maybe you specialize in transforming really small spaces into beautiful spaces, or maybe you work on transforming old homes into newer, into newer, more modern looks, right? You might have a certain niche that you work with in interior design. So that's where I want to see that piece come out, is kind of that second one. So in the second bucket, I call it either like the education piece or behind the scenes. This is where we want to get a bit deeper. And this again could be in the, what I want to call the content piece or in the caption, but this is where I want to know like, oh, wow, like how did she transform that room? And you might tell me a story in the caption, or you might link to some of the different, items that are in the room or some of the trends that are happening. And you're going to mix in some of that personal content so that I get to know you as the business owner.
So if the goal of the first one, of the first bucket, is to generate likes, to just show off your work, then the goal of the second pillar is really for your audience to get to know you and how you work, your ways. Maybe it's your process that's the differentiator in your brand. Maybe it is, like you said, the niche. Maybe it's, I don't know, the type of clients that you work with. So here the goal is for your audience to get to know you specifically.
Yes.
And what sets you apart, I'm assuming, from everybody else.
Yes, I love that. And typically this kind of content will drive more comments because now people want to ask you questions like, ooh, tell me more about that throw pillow that you're using, or they might follow up with something in your caption to be like, oh, you mentioned this, but what about that? So typically on this type of content, we're going to see comments, but potentially also saves, might be deeper where you're walking me through the stages of something. So again, even the interactions on the content will likely be different.
Mm-hmm. And I am not sure if you're going to get to it, but in these type of posts, are we putting like a call to action at the end, or they're just supposed to be, this is it, this is how I work, and then leave it at that kind of, this is you getting to know me? Or do you want them to do something after?
Very good question. So on every post, there should be a call to action, except the call to action should not always be sales. I think that's the big disconnect. So people think when call to action, when you don't live and breathe social media every day, people think call to actions mean book me, hire me, link in bio. We're going to save those for bucket number 3, which we're going to talk about in a second. The calls to action can be things like save this post for future inspiration, or what's your favorite color to use in a kitchen, right? So we want to invite conversation in these other 2 buckets, but we're not saying buy this, hire me, book now. We're just inviting people into our world with conversations, or to your point, the post can just kind of end. But typically I try and come up with a quick question that could be answered, or it could be things like, double tap this post if you love these colors, or drop your favorite, emoji below. It could be something quick and simple, but we do want to drive conversation on the post itself.
I love that. It's almost like it's not your main call to action, but it's almost like a micro commitment that we want them to take.
Yeah. Oh, I like that micro commitment. That's a good word. I'm going to
Yeah,
bookmark that one.
there's a term. There's a term in copywriting that we use. It's when you, because I specialize in website copy. So when I write website copy, we're not just talking about main calls to action on every page. We're talking about micro commitments. Sometimes we just want them to move down to take a look at the next section to take, because the main call to action, yes, you want them to book the call. But sometimes when your audience just arrive on your homepage, we want them to take the next step. And that's to compel them enough or to get them curious enough to learn more about your brand, to learn more about your services. So we kind of moving them step by step. So I guess that's why we call it like a micro commitment. But that's good to know. Okay, so we covered pillar number 1, pillar number 2. What's pillar number 3?
Okay, so pillar number 3 is the one you've all been waiting for. And yes, this is the sales or consult piece. So we absolutely can have posts on social media that are more direct salesy. I know sometimes that makes people uncomfortable, but you do want to let people know how to work with you. In fact, I always recommend having a post if you're on Instagram that's pinned to the top of your feed. That's like a how to work with you, maybe carousel or reel that explains your services, because obviously there's some nuance in the interior design industry. Not every interior designer offers the same services or packages. So you would definitely want to have some content that is hey, this is my spring refresh package. Here's what it includes: A, B, and C. Book a free consult now to find out more, right? So a post that you're actually explaining the process of working with you. So you can have a very salesy post. You could also have some lighter salesy posts, things that might be like a testimonial where you share a story, or like milestones where you're not objectively saying it out loud. Like, by the way, I'm great, book with me. But that's kind of the undertone of the post, is like, I did a great job. And if you would like those same results, contact me for a free consult. Now, spoiler alert, every time you put out a piece of content that has this very salesy call to action, you will have way lower engagement on it. So engagement, again, being those likes, comments, and shares. But that's okay, because the point of this post wasn't to get likes, comments, or shares. The point of this post was to get consults. So that's how we have to measure those ones. And so that's why we need all 3. If it's all sales all the time, no one wants to engage with your content. But sometimes you do need to remind people how to work with you, or sometimes you are running a special and you do need to let people know. So it's really finding a balance between the 3 pillars. So you could think of it like I'm making hand gestures, which I realize is not great on a podcast, but I'm making a funnel gesture, if you can imagine in your mind. With awareness being, the top of the funnel, conversion being the middle, and then sales being at the bottom of the funnel.
I like that visual, actually. And it makes sense. And I feel like a lot of interior designers will cringe about the 3rd pillar, but you absolutely have to have that. If you had to put together like a ratio of what would be the ratio, it's not like 35, whatever that is, like the equal number of that. Would sales be like the lowest one?
Yes. Yeah.
Like 10% or 20?
Yeah. Great point. I usually say, so again, posts per week, because that's usually what my clients want to know. So you're kind of, think about like I probably say 2 awareness posts a week, 1 education post a week, and then 1 to 2 per month of the sales you want. And again, you can be really salesy and specific, or it could be like a lighter testimonial kind of sales, depending on what you have going. And obviously, if you're an interior designer who does have promotions, that I would save those for those types of things. If your services are kind of the same year round, then you might want to have 1 per month that's your dedicated. Like, by the way, if you're looking forward to spring, I'm now booking out into, to June if you want to get in. So even reminding people like, by the way, I've only got 2 spots left for this spring, sprinkling in some of that as well.
I actually like it's such a good idea that with sales bucket, it doesn't have to be really hardcore salesy. It can be this soft sell. And like you said, testimonials or other type of social proof, we call it in copywriting, it's still salesy because it signals trust. It shows you off as an authority in the space. And it basically allows people to feel a bit more comfortable or a bit more likely to reach out to you, because other people, they can see that other people or other industry bodies have trusted you, and maybe they worked with you or collaborated with you. I like that idea. So when you think about your sales bucket, don't think that it's going to be, if you want to work with me, kind of front and center. It feels a little bit uncomfortable, I think, for everyone, not just for interior designers, but there are lots of different types of salesy posts.
Yeah, you could sprinkle it in there. And of course, try changing it up, right? Try changing up between something more direct versus that kind of softer social proof or other ways to sprinkle it in. But you kind of want to give permission for people to reach out to you about certain things too. And it could be as simple as, hey, like if you have questions about getting started, DM me, happy to chat, right? Like just kind of giving people the next steps, like, oh, I could just send her a DM to ask a question. Okay, that's good to know. And not just like a nice soft opening for someone to reach out to you.
I also love the idea of having those posts created in advance and kind of keeping them as this evergreen content, which you just, like you said, once a month, you just pull out that post and post it. If you can recycle it, right? You don't have to create it from scratch. Maybe you create a different graphic with that, but the messaging can stay more or less the same. Or similar.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big fan of repurposing, recycling content. I just had a post on LinkedIn last week that did very well, and the caption was something like, bad news. No one remembers your post from 6 months ago. Good news. No one remembers your post from 6 months ago, right? So we definitely can be reusing and repurposing our content across social media platforms.
I like that. I like that. Okay, cool. So we talked about the different types of content. Now, you just mentioned LinkedIn, so I feel like it's a good segue to talk about, well, where do you have to show up for your audience? I'm assuming it depends where your audience hangs out. And I feel like for interior designers, most interior designers that I've spoke with and have worked over the course of the 5 years, most of them hang out or their audience hangs out on Instagram. So, but how do you determine where to show up for them?
Yeah, I think there's kind of two lenses to it. So one, everybody, like you will find your people on every platform. I know there's this whole thing like you have to be on the platform, like every platform has like a billion people on it. So there are people in your, who are your target clients on all of them. So for me, it's actually really more the opposite now. Like, where do you hang out and where do you want to hang out? Because Instagram and LinkedIn are very different platforms. So as an interior designer, I'm going to have to say you probably need to be on Instagram to some degree because your content is so visual, right? Like interior designers, I'm expecting to see these visual, beautiful graphics of what you worked on because that's the industry that you're in. So you're probably stuck with Instagram, as a platform. Now, if you're somebody who loves video content and you're like, Jen, I want to be on videos all day, be on TikTok. Like you could probably crush TikTok with some amazing interior design content. If videos is the primary way you want to be showing up, I'd be like, why not do both? Why not do Instagram and TikTok? Now, conversely, one of the reasons I personally am loving LinkedIn is it's a little bit less visual heavy. So you don't have to have visuals go out. Now, if you already got great pictures, great. You're one step ahead of the game. For people like myself and Masha like you, where my visuals are just me all the time. I don't have a beautiful thing to take pictures of other than me at my desk yet again typing. I love LinkedIn because I could really work on the copy there. And you're just going to connect with just different people. So sometimes when I want to really just break out from kind of my community on Instagram and just tap into a different audience, LinkedIn is where I want to go for that content. So I've been really, I don't want to say heavily, but I guess, pretty consistent on LinkedIn for this entire year. And I'm really starting to see kind of the results pay off for that. But especially for me, because I like copywriting and probably the same like you, I don't have every post go out with a visual. Like I have LinkedIn posts that do really well that are just text. So if you're an interior designer who's like, I love visuals, but I actually love writing too, or I've got some fun, witty things I want to say, I'd say, why not be on LinkedIn? Because we know on LinkedIn, we've got people who are professional. You can get really specific with your targeting. That's a whole other conversation. But there are all kinds of business professionals on LinkedIn who all own homes, who probably could all use an interior designer too.
That's right. I like that. I personally have tried LinkedIn. Actually, in my corporate career, I was for 15 years, I was in marketing, working for the Big Four. So I was all over LinkedIn. And then when I launched my business 5 years ago, I switched to Instagram. And then a few years back, I decided to try LinkedIn again. Surprise, surprise, I did not find any interior designers there. However, I was not recruited, but I was found for a few key people in the industry to speak at events through LinkedIn, which was so interesting. So it's not like a client generating platform for me, but more like professional development and visibility and those kind of things. So So let's not disregard completely, LinkedIn and other similar platforms for this specific industry. It's worth a try.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a good point. I've already had a few people reach out about, because I do a number of speaking things and of course, awesome podcasts like this one. So sometimes there's different avenues of connecting. Again, as an interior designer, other people you could be collaborating with, other people who own magazines or showrooms or events or trade shows that you want to get in front of. And maybe LinkedIn is that platform for you.
I like that. Cool. All right. So I'm actually going to try this. I really want to try your advice, and I took a lot of notes, but maybe next we could talk about how do you actually do that? You made a bold promise that we can create content calendar, or what was it? Content in, develop a content plan in under 30 minutes. How do we do that? Can you walk us through some steps that we need to take?
Yes, exactly. So again, I'm going to use my hands to draw out some visuals here. So just, bear with me here. So usually when people come with, what are we going to write about? What are we going to write about? The place I always draw people back to is, what are the questions every consult is asking you? What are the questions, the FAQs, we can call them frequently asked questions. What are the FAQs on your website? What do people have to fill out to work with you? Or what does every consult, and in every industry, you probably get some of the same questions every single time. I think often people think, oh, these questions are so boring or so the same that they're not worth creating content about. And I'm like, no, that is what the content is about. Because if your audience has to ask you and they don't know the answer, then that actually should be a driver for our content, because we want to answer those questions ahead of a consult to make it even better. And obviously, there's some disconnect in your industry. In any industry, what seems obvious to you, the business owner, is usually not obvious to everybody else who's not in your industry and who's not living and breathing interior design. So when you guys are talking about, Pantone colors and themes and trends, you guys are like, this is so, everybody knows this. And then I'm over here like, I don't know anything about my home. It's like a mishmash of kids stuff. Like, I don't have any interior design knowledge at all. So I definitely need the basics. So for our content plan, if you have a piece of paper in front of you, you can write down, make a little grid chart, if you will, but write down 4 FAQs, 4 frequently asked questions, right? So again, if you have them already on your website, great, pull those. Otherwise, some of the ideas can be things like, what's a myth in your industry, right? Like people think interior design is X, but actually it's Y. How do you work with an interior designer? What does it look like before and after? Could be things about pricing in there. What's the biggest change a room can make, right? Whether that's the answer could be paint colors or furniture. I actually don't know. But some of those myth questions, those big, bold questions about, again, interior design. So if you're listening to this podcast, you could hit pause now and you could write these questions down. Okay. We'll assume you hit pause.
And I like that because actually, but you know what, though? A lot of people, so I ask that same question when I do website copy audit, and you'd be surprised. It's got like a gold mine of information because people think, well, it's a typical question about price, like how much does a typical project cost? But there's so many other questions that pop up, and it's a good idea to have like this archive of questions that people typically ask, because from what I've seen my clients say, questions like, how long is a typical project? How involved do I have to be? Do I have to go shopping with you for like tiles and products and whatever? How much hand holding it is? Are there different packages? There's so, like, off the top of my head, I already could come up with like 5 to 10 questions probably. So it's a good idea to pause that. I like your advice and just make a list of those.
Awesome. So you've got your questions now. So let's say you've written down 4 questions. Then let's think back to those content pillars. So the content pillars were 1, awareness, 2, kind of that education trust bucket, and 3, sales. So then what you have to do is, I want you to answer all of the questions for different buckets. Idea. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple of examples now, because you're like, what is Jen talking about? Okay, so let's say I've got a good example here from home staging, which I realize is not quite interior design, but just work with me on it, because I have the visual in front of me, so it makes it easier for me. So let's say the question was from a home stager, and this could be interior design. Do I have to stage my whole house? So maybe your question is, do I have to interior design my whole house, or can I just pick a room, right? Because that could be a question somebody has. So if content pillar number 1 can just be, maybe it's a reel showing, even if you just did one room of interior design, the before and the after it makes on your whole house. It's a quick hit. It's a visual. Like, even if you just interior design one section of your house, it still transforms your whole house, right? Like, you don't have to commit to doing, your entire 3-bedroom house. You could just do your kitchen or just your living room or just a kid's room, whatever that is. That's it. Inspiration. Content pillar number 1, quick reel, just showing one room stage in the house. Then maybe for education. So same question. Do I have to interior design my whole house or can I just pick a single room? Then it's education. So maybe you show different rooms being interior designed and some different projects that you've worked on. Like, hey, in this house, we did this and this was the result. And in this house, we did this and this was the result. So again, being a bit more specific about the education for how much, interior design does one have to do to, really make it worth it. And then for content pillar number 3, for again, that sales or that consults one, this could be the process where you, again, how does one work with an interior designer? Well, step 1, we look at, what your goals are for your, for designing your dream home. Step 2, we look at the square footage, we evaluate your budget. And step 3, we put together a plan to get the best, value for your dollar so that you can fall in love with your dream home. But maybe you actually detail the process out. And that one, the call to action is, if you'd like to learn more, DM me or book a free consult. So same question, same FAQ, but I'm just answering it slightly different. So awareness, education, and then in a more salesy way. How is that sounding so far, Masha, with the visual in front of you?
That's cool. I like that. Yeah, I like that. I like that we are taking it, we're kind of like breaking it down and almost answering one question from different angles and covering all bases. And by the way, as Jen was talking, it just reminded me, some designers only work on a full home transformation. So do what makes sense for your business. If you never work in a capacity where you can't just hire me for a 1-room transformation, do that, right? You can
Absolutely.
still take that, because if this is how you work, you can still do that and take it from that perspective, that in order to work with me, we really work on this full home transformation to make sure that there's cohesion and there is kind of unity and all those things, but it has to make sense for your business and how you work.
Yeah, exactly. The reason I really want people to break it down is sometimes with FAQs or content ideas, business owners either want to cram too much into one thing, or the flip side is you can't come up with enough ideas. So the goal by taking every question, like maybe the question is like, how long does the process take? That's a huge question to answer. And you can answer it in so many different ways. So it's like, how do I keep coming back to how long does it take in different ways for content, right? Something short and funny, like how long does it take versus like, it's like force speed of you like working in interior design, like how fast it really feels. And then versus like education, again, something more step-by-step that talks about like for a whole house transformation, our process is usually 3 months. And here's what happens. And it's like a visual timeline over the 3 months. And then maybe a testimonial of someone who worked with you and got their whole house transformation done in 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, whatever that typical process is.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the goal is to go, I don't just have to answer or use a piece of content once. Those core pillars or those core questions, I should come back to repeatedly, but just answer them in different ways.
Because at the end of the day, the reason why we keep coming back to the frequently asked questions is that's the actual question that people actually want to know answers to, right? Because we do the same with website copy. If people are asking certain questions, with website copy, the reason why I asked that in my project brief is because people want to know, people genuinely want to have answers to these questions, and your website copy and your social media content has to proactively address those questions, but also anticipate other questions that people don't even know that they have.
Yes, exactly. Because I would imagine with interior design, one of the top questions are going to be around pricing and time. And then I think your third question, like involvement, right? So like, how much does it cost? How long does it take? And how much do I have to be involved? So those are the questions your people, they're almost nervous to book a consult with you because they want to know where that's going to go. They want to know that they're in the right bucket. Well, is it a 1-month project or a 6-month project? Do I have to go to the store with you, or is this a totally you do it all for me, I'm not even involved? Is the process cost between X or is it more like Y? And then what happens is you kind of end up, I don't want to say pre-screening, but you just end up connecting with people who are the right people for you because they're not totally, oh shoot, I thought it was going to be 1 month, but it's 6 months. I wish I had known that ahead of time. Now we've jumped on a consult and wasted everybody's time because I just didn't have that question answered ahead of time. And then also just being funny with some of this stuff and kind of addressing like, hey, the reason it doesn't take 1 month to do is because these are all the things that I'm doing. And then I can go, oh, okay, I actually have unrealistic expectations. Now that I know what's involved in interior design, I can better align my expectations so that I'm going to be a better client for you.
So you are not only informing your ideal audience, but you're also educating them on how long actually every everything takes, or the realistic, basically setting expectations
Yes.
for your ideal audience, because the last thing that you want to do is jump on a call or a discovery call and the client is not the right fit, which is why in my contact form I usually have some type of pre-qualifier, whether it's the price or something else. Or for interior designers, it could be whether they've worked with an interior design firm before. If they did, they know what to expect, or when do they expect a finished home. If it's 2 months, then it's definitely not realistic, because typically these projects run for a year, sometimes longer.
Yeah, exactly. And so when you can use your content to better educate your ideal clients or ideal customers, then they're just going to be better customers for you. And you can all have you can also kind of poke fun on it, right? Like you can understand, like, sure, of course the homeowner wants it done quickly. Of course they do. They're so excited for their new home, but you also can't shortcut your process, because then you would be under delivering on the results that you promised them.
I love it. Okay, cool. So we put together frequently asked questions. We made a list of 4. Then we looked at our pillars, the 3 pillars, and then we answered each question from, I guess, the perspective of that particular bucket, the awareness, educational, and the salesy one.
Correct.
What's next?
Okay, so now imagine you made a grid. That would give you 12 posts, which if you're posting about 3 times a week, that's your 3 posts times 4 weeks, right? 3 times 4 weeks right there. So that's about a month of content. Now, obviously, this is a very fast way to do it. So you might add in a bit more of the awareness content. We might dial back one of the sales posts to kind of better fit our funnel. But the goal is, okay, I've got 12 content ideas here to work with. Great. If I'm going to an event this month, or a few extra spur the things, I could add more in. But if I add nothing else this month in, I've got 12 pieces of content ideas. So that's my basis. I'm really kind of coming back to the same content ideas all the time. And people are often like, should I talk about the same post in the same month? And I'm like, yes, trust me, people forget, the content moves fast. Don't worry that we're talking about some of the same subjects in a month. So then the next piece for you is either, again, depending on your process, visuals or writing, depending on where you like to go. I'm going to start with visuals first, since you're interior designers. So now you can go, okay, of the 12 pieces of content I have, do you have stock images or brand photos that you can use for some of them, right? I know interior designers often have a suite of photos from past clients or past projects. So which ones can I just go, okay, this photo works for this photo works for this, that photo works for that? Great. If you're using a tool like Canva, maybe you're doing some graphic design, again, depending on how you like to set up your Instagram feed, you can go, okay, I'm going to make these 3 carousels, and I'm going to make them in Canva. So I'm going to bookmark these 3 to make them carousels in Canva. Great. And then, I want to put some reels in this month. Awesome. Well, I'm staging that one client next week. I could probably film all 4 of these reels next week in that client's house, get them all done. Boom. So the goal here is then to kind of know what content do you already have, if you have a brand library, and then what pieces of content do I need to create, either, by shooting it for videos or graphic design for the month.
And I'm assuming you can sprinkle in some of your photos from your branding photo shoot of yourself,
exactly,
right? And so then we've got a combination of these carousels, and we've got your project photos and some of your own pictures, or maybe Canva. I haven't really seen a lot of designers use those. But okay, so that's great. So we know what to do next. We got to kind of organize our visuals to put it beside the copy that we've created.
Yes, exactly. So now we've got the visuals done. Now write your caption. So even if your visual on Canva or Reel has copy on it, still need to write a caption every single post, every single time. For me, I write all my captions in a Google Doc. It's not fancy, but it works. But I just need plain paper to write on. That's just my method. And I keep a Google Doc running for the whole year, because then I can easily go back and see, like, when was the last time I talked about this topic? I can just Control F and look up the keywords and find it. So for me, run Google Doc. I've got all my copy there. But again, however works for you to make this process work. But don't write it on your phone. That's what I tell people. 1, please don't write on your phone. It takes so long to type on your thumbs. And 2, then you don't have a record of that anywhere, right? So over time, if you're repurposing content, if it's just on your phone, you can't easily repurpose that post if you have the Google Doc saved with the information. So now you've got your plan, your visuals, your copy. Then step, 4 technically is to schedule your content in advance when applicable. So there are lots of tools out there that can schedule content. You can actually schedule content on Instagram directly from the app itself. You could use Facebook, Meta Suite to schedule content for free to Facebook and Instagram, or a third-party scheduling tool of your choice. There are tons out there that will do it. But the goal is to schedule at least some of your content in a perfect world every month, so that, when you have these busy days, when you're on site at your client's house or you're at an event, you just got some content taken care of so that you're not posting on the fly.
I love that advice. I use Buffer for my own business just because it's easier. I don't always schedule things, but when I do have content prepared, it's just so much easier to do that. But I do want to go back 1 second because I think you gave this amazing advice. Keeping all of your captions, all of your content that you've created in a Word doc or in a Google Doc. I have started using Google Doc for my email newsletters. And all I do is simply create a header for each of the because I do this Friday newsletter, and I create a header. And now on the left, I have a list of all the dates that I've shared this content, these emails. So now I have this one long, big ass document full of emails, which I always repurpose. I have I've done it already at least 5, 6 times that I repurpose content, and it just makes my life so much easier. Whereas before I was relying on my notepad, on my iPhone, or somewhere else, or in these different places. And now it's all in one single document. And even more than that, I use that as a starting point for any other content. So this is for the email, but I also cross promote it on my social as well.
Oh, I love that. That's perfect. Yeah. I feel like anywhere you can store content to save and repurpose easily is going to be a huge win.
Love that. Okay, cool. So we have scheduled. Are we done
We're
at
done.
this point?
So now at this point, what else do you need to do? I still encourage my clients to use Instagram stories when they can for that kind of in the moment content, something quick, something they want to link to directly. So I still sprinkle in the Instagram stories, but that's meant to be kind of impromptu, adding it in when you can. But otherwise, the next plan isn't to think ahead to next month, right? The reality is, as like we kind of talked about, we do always need to be consistent. So I'm always like, whenever you're in a place where you can shoot content, just shoot some content. You don't have to know what it is for yet, but kind of building up that B-roll, building up those assets that you can use for next month's content plan is great.
I like that. No, that's a good idea. And that could be something. I think I've had a couple of episodes where I talked to other experts that recommended do something simple like recording yourself, I don't know, typing at a computer or having coffee or just talking about nothing when you're visiting a site and just walking people through, because you can always repurpose that, overlay it with music, overlay it with other captions, and reuse it basically.
Yeah. I mean, I tell people, like, if you look through my reels, I'm like, Jen has made like 100 cups of tea for reels now. I even made a reel making fun of myself for making tea on so many of my reels. It's like a meta reel. Because again, for me, I don't have a beautiful home where I'm interior designing it. Again, it's me at my desk, kind of like yourself. So I've got to get creative with, like, I have lots of videos of me at my desk typing, but like, what else can I use? So it's Jen making tea, Jen reading on the couch, Jen walking somewhere in her house. And I just honestly repeat those every single week.
That's cool. But so what does that do? What does that show to your audience? Why do you think that works or invites engagement? Or why do you think it's interesting, those kind of reels or videos?
Yeah,
or whatever?
I think one, it comes down to the copy, right? It's about having something kind of punchy to say with the reel. There's a few factors. There's like what's Jen doing in the background, but then it's the copy and the story. So as long as I'm telling a good story, the visuals for me and my industry don't matter as much. Definitely in interior design, your visuals do matter more because I am, hiring you based off the visuals that you're creating. But it doesn't have to be perfect. I think that's the difference. Do I want to see some brand photos in your feed? Absolutely. That's why you have brand photos as an interior designer. But when it comes to video content, I don't think we're expecting this perfect visual transformation all the time. And I think that's where people get nervous to be like, oh, but the videos have to be perfect. And I'm like, no, they don't. I know you're not a video editor. I'm not hiring you to be a video editor. I'm hiring you to be my interior designer. So, your video skills don't have to be perfect because that's not your skill set. Your skill set is interior design.
I have a question for you. So let's say I'm always scared that the content will attract a DIY type of crowd rather than a premium client. And a lot of interior designers, a lot of them are pivoting right now. A lot of them are switching gears and kind of trying to attract a better client. Do you have any advice for those kind of interior designers that are really trying to attract a more premium audience? What should they be posting, or maybe what shouldn't they be posting to make sure that they're not attracting the wrong kind of client?
Yeah. So I think there's two things. So one, it's going to be, I picture the funnel again, right? You're going to have people who are attracted to it all different price points and budgets. That's just the reality of life. And you're likely going to have the largest bucket of people who are still in that DIY stage or maybe just not a right price point fit. but that's okay. At some point, we just need followers and we just need growth. Now, how do I also attract premium clients? A couple of things there. One, if you're a premium brand, your branding needs to feel premium. So hands down, you're in a bit of a different category then. So if you're like, I'm a premium brand, then your content should look premium. Doesn't mean we can't have some videos, I want to say shot on the fly, but now I'm expecting a bit of a higher quality. I want to see these brand photos come through. I'm expecting more polished look and feel from your branding overall. I'm expecting the writing to be better. I'm expecting your website to match the social media content so that if you have a premium website, your social media content also feels different as well. And then I think also that transparency, like say it in your Instagram bio. Like if you are the #1 interior designer for luxury homes in Vancouver, say that, right? Don't like sugarcoat it. Because I think sometimes people are like, oh, well, I still might want to talk to them. I'm like, but you don't because they don't have your budget. So say that up front, be transparent and have a pinned post that maybe talks about your packages and your pricing. And if your packages start from $50,000 because that's your client, say that up front, right? And that's okay. Like that's not nothing to be embarrassed about. That's the level of service you provide. And there are different designers that work on all different types of price points and ranges. So be clear about it. It doesn't mean you can't have fun with your content, but just be clear about who, at the end of the day, who you work with one-on-one directly. Because I also say you never know where you might go with things. Just because you have premium clients, you might have other clients who are going to recommend you to their premium client friends, right? So you're still going to have a broad audience of people, but as long as you're clear in your bio and your branding feels premium, that's kind of look and feel we want to go for.
I like that. And you said something so very important, your content. And I'm assuming all the different touch points from your website to your social media, to your email or whatever, however you show up, all of your different touch points, they have to look and feel premium. But as far as messaging, are there certain topics that people should be avoiding if they don't want to attract the wrong clients?
I mean, I wouldn't talk too much then about like, if you don't want DIY clients, don't talk about DIY, right? Like don't say this is how I DIY because you're not going to DIY. So you don't want to give in that category, you're not giving DIY tips. At that point, I want you to be talking about here's how to have a premium experience. Here's what luxury throw pillows do for your room. Here's where I go shopping, and it's not, it's not like Target, right? It's like it's a higher end store where you go shopping with your clients. So showing the luxury experience to go, oh wow, they shop at. See, I don't even know high-end stores. I'm clearly not the right customer for that person. Whatever those high-end stores are, though, that people shop at, like show those luxury experiences so that right away I'm going, ooh, like I like that, but I know that I'm not the target client for that. And that's okay. I might still follow their content. I might be like, wow, they have great content, but I know at the end of the day, I'm not a fit for them, but I might have friends who are a fit for them.
Yeah. So making sure that things, names, companies, products, whatever resonates with your ideal audience, something that they recognize, something that they like, which if you know your audience, which you should know your audience before you write a word of copy, then you would know that certain things would resonate with a specific kind of client.
Yes, exactly.
Cool. All right, Jen. So this is all great. We've got a plan. Like I said, I'm committed to try that. I am definitely going to try it this week. But tell me, how do we know if it's working? We've created this amazing plan. How do we know that it's actually working? What should we be on the lookout for?
A couple of different ways. And so everyone's metrics are going to be a little bit different. So one, there's the pure engagement piece on Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever platform of your choice is my content resonating, right? So if I'm putting out an awareness piece of content, is it doing what I thought it would do? And honestly, it's going to take a few tries to get it right. So don't be discouraged if it doesn't at first. It can take several iterations. When I'm putting out education, do I get a lot of comments? Am I driving education? And when I put out salesy content, do I see conversions come in? So I do always want to see, first is the social media side working of things. Is it doing on Instagram what I thought it would do? Am I getting new people? Am I having conversations in my DMs? The second side is tracking where your leads and, conversions come from. So for me on my intake form, I have a field that says, where did you find me? And everybody has to fill it out so I can know if I came from LinkedIn, from Google, from a word of mouth referral, from my website, whatever that might be, so that I'm tracking every single conversation I have. I know where it came from, kind of piece. And three, this one's kind of a different one, but I really believe your content has to light you up. Like you have to kind of be in love with your content a little bit. So I know content for me feels good when I'm like, this feels so authentic to me. And when I put out content like that, 9 times out of 10, it's my best content for sure. Like it's the content that goes viral. It's the content that really connects with people because I'm like, ooh, this is like a bit juicy in my industry or for me personally. And I really want to share it because there's something here. And then that's the content that always connects. Now, it doesn't always lead to immediate sales, but it leads to like a connection. And people in my industry are like, yes, oh my gosh, thank you for saying this. Or like, oh my gosh, that's a wild story. So that's how I know it's connecting too. So there's different metrics for different stages, but be prepared to be in it for the long-term game. You know, social media isn't you make a post, you make a sale. It's often not that direct. A lot of times for interior designers too, you're in the kind of industry where you probably don't have a lot of repeat clients unless they're moving or they're upgrading their home. But you do want to stay in touch with your past clients so they can easily refer you to new clients. So sometimes social media is really just about staying top of mind with all of your clients so that they can go, oh my gosh, look, interior designer ABC, I love what they do. And they're going to share that post with their friend who they know is moving so that they can refer you. So again, it depends on what your client journey looks like for you. But even if you get more referrals from past clients, ask them, like, because a lot of my clients say, oh yeah, you posted that on social media. And then that reminded me to tell someone about you. So it was kind of like, it was a word of mouth referral, but it was actually like a social media word of mouth referral, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. It does. And I like that. I think we should reiterate that it is a long-term game for sure. It takes a while, especially with such a significant investment as interior design service. So sometimes it takes a while. And I also recently heard a stat. I can't remember how many times it was, but it was, I think it takes 7 times for somebody to hear something, for somebody then to take that next step, because now they've heard about you multiple times. You know, they took the time to get to know you, to create that emotional connection. Because at the end of the day, that's what we want to do. We want to create that emotional connection, because only those brands that we make that connection, the deeper connection, then we end up working with most of the time, I would say.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, cool. So this has been so great. I'm going to ask you one last question, and that's something that I usually ask my guests. What has been one habit or practice that you implemented in your life or in your business that has been game changing?
I'll give you one life and one business one. So a life one for me, I wake up early 5 days a week and work out at home in the morning. I have young kids. Working out is a priority for me, but I mean, as anyone who's been through the journey of having kids, like finding the time to make it all work. So once, spoiler alert, my youngest is like 4.5. So if you're like listening to this with like a newborn, this advice is not for you. This is for advice with like when you're out of the toddler stage. But I think making that commitment to like starting my mornings earlier, because then it's like my workout's done and I feel so much more like charged for my day as a business owner. You know, it's like I've done one personal thing for me in the morning and then I'm ready to start my day. And I bring so much more energy to my day that way, having that like time for me in the morning. And then kind of on the similar side for as a business owner, I always set aside Sunday night to plan my week ahead. So whether it doesn't mean planning all of my content, get everything done, but kind of sitting down, spending an hour Sunday night, looking at my week and going, okay, like what projects are coming up, the content that's coming up, and just so that I'm starting kind of Monday morning with a game plan and with kind of a plan for the week, because there's always 1,000 things on the go. You know this as a business owner, so you've got to find that time to be like, stop and slow down and make a plan for the week so that when you hit Monday morning, you feel ready to go.
That's such a great tip and such a great practice, because then when you do that on a Sunday night, because I do something similar, then on a Monday morning, you're never like, okay, what am I working on today? What are my priorities? So that's awesome. Jen, this has been so amazing. You've shared so many amazing insights and tips and best practices. If interior designers want to work with you, or they want to follow you, or just want to get to know you, where can they find you?
Awesome. If you are on Instagram as an interior designer, I'm at Social with Jen, Jen. And if you go over to Social with Jen, I've got some great free resources on my Instagram page, including a content calendar that will help you kind of fill out this 4x3 grid. It's got all kinds of great content prompts in there and ideas, and a few other great free resources as well. And then my website is mountaintopconsulting.ca.
I'll make sure to put that in the show notes. Jen, thank you so much again.
Yeah, thank you for having me here. It was fun.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Marketing for Designers. This is Masha Cohen signing off. See you next week.